back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records and talk about why I love them. Today I have a special guest. Yeah. One of my favorite people on the planet. It's my sister.
My sister. And today we're talking about one of my favorite records.
Of all time.
Of all time. I think that, yeah. Do
you want to tell them what it is?
Oh, today we are doing the 1979 album Off the Wall by Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Serious for a moment. Our caveat is that Michael Jackson is a contentious figure in the public sphere, so we will not be discussing any of his personal life. We are here just to talk about his music because, you know, we want to be respectful of everyone. But if that's still a deal breaker for you, I understand. Do you understand?
I understand.
Okay. And there's a catalog of like 129 other videos that you could watch.
And at least 4 of them have me in it. That's the one where I'm in a stripy shirt.
I've Got a Feeling
That's what
by
it
the
was.
Beatles. There's one where we're singing harmonies together. I am too hot. I have to take my top sweater off. I'm really sorry.
Your top sweater.
Yeah, I've got 2 on. The conceit of this video is that this is a classic albums week on Vinyl Friday. And normally I put that album to a vote on my posts tab. But as my sister is visiting and it's a special occasion, and she had requested Michael Jackson, it was between this album and Thriller. And someone, I feel bad calling them out like this.
An idea that was floating around in the discussion was, or something.
Okay, in the interest of not calling anyone out, an idea that was floating around in the discussion was that Michael Jackson is the most overrated pop artist of all time. I think that that comment and that take generally is way off base, and so we together have constructed this video of counterarguments. We have 11 counterarguments.
Which is a nice, tidy number.
Let's begin.
All right.
One of the reasons that Michael Jackson is not the most overrated pop artist is that he was able to successfully make the transition from child star to respected... I should put the record on.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
Respected adult artist.
And it sounds like this.
And it sounds like this.
And now we just dance for 42 minutes.
Bit of background. Do you want to tell us about how he was in Motown?
He was in Motown.
Yeah, he was.
I think I can
Motown.
remember the details.
Okay.
When did they start the Jackson 5?
Maybe we should have. Editor Nancy is going to tell you when the Jackson 5 started. But suffice to say, he was a child at the time.
He was a child. So Michael Jackson is part of a family of musically talented children who, according to the lore, distracted their abusive father one evening.
We're veering dangerously close to personal life, but go on.
Okay.
I think it's relevant.
By playing music, and he realized that he could monetize their talent by putting together a band comprising, I think, all the boys in the family, including the youngest, Michael.
You're doing great.
Thank you. I'm really trying here. Some Jackson 5 hits that you may have heard include ABC, I Want You Back,
Oh, baby, give me one more chance.
I'll Be There.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
The band is signed by Motown and churn out a number of records. Michael, as a soloist, churns out a number of records as a child, all under Motown. But Off the Wall represents his kind of first breakaway from the Jackson 5 and his first foray into an adult sound that has less to do with his Motown kind of origins.
Pitchfork called it his Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah,
I think
that's
it was a good way of saying
That's a
that.
good way of saying that.
Because, we'll rewind a little bit again.
Hey everyone, Editor Nancy here, because these two chumps forgot one of the most important points of Michael Jackson's backstory, and that is that the Jacksons, once they'd sort of aged out of their cute childishness, starred in a short-lived variety show called The Jacksons. And there was a segment that repeated called On the Wall. It looked like this.
On the wall. On the wall.
Which is why the name and cover art of Off the Wall are so significant. Back to you.
In 1978, he starred in The Wiz, which I think is a masterpiece, but which
Did not receive,
flopped resoundingly.
except for Michael's performance, which critics largely agreed was good.
Good.
Was good.
One thumb up.
Tip top.
You can't win.
It was on the set of The Wiz that Michael Jackson met Quincy Jones, the producer, where he was working on the music. He asked Quincy to help him with his first proper album. Not just his first solo album, but the first album that was his. He really advocated strongly for his creative control, which I think is part of the reason that the transition was a success.
This might be a little bit of a wild comparison, but child stars who are trying to find their place in the entertainment sphere as adults often try on a bunch of different personas. I think of Miley Cyrus. Personae. I think of Miley Cyrus in her Bangers era, where she borrowed heavily from R&B and hip-hop and then quickly renounced that and turned back to her country roots. And I don't feel like this is Michael Jackson trying something on
I get
a
the
record.
impression that he had a sense of what he wanted to do and had that sense for a while. As a child in Motown, he used to sit in on the sessions of other musicians, so like Diana Ross,
Can't hurry it out. No, you just have to wait.
Marvin Gaye.
Ooh, I bet you're wondering how I do.
In a way, listening to these other musicians perform was his schooling. And then as he was preparing for the writing release of this album, he frequented Studio 54.
Piercing lights, a cascade of special effects, supple-bodied young waiters dressed in nothing but shorts, and drinks at £1.50 a glass.
Not because he was all about the debaucherous life, apparently he didn't partake of any of those things, but because he liked to see what the DJs were doing and what the crowd responded well to, and also just dancing. Apparently he used to really love to cut a rug on the floor.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so by the time he met Quincy Jones, he was like, you know what, I have these ideas, I'm ready to employ them. Will you help me do that?
And
Quincy said
ideas
yes.
that were fully formed
Yeah.
as well and just ready to go.
His rights as a musician, creatively, were being strongly curtailed by Motown when he was there. So he really wasn't allowed any input about how he wanted to do things. This is a quote from the Pitchfork review of the re-release of this album. Just as the album was starting to take off in late 1979, Michael wrote a note to himself on the back of a tour itinerary, and this is the note. I want a whole new character, a whole new look. I should be a totally different person. People should never think of me as the kid who sang ABC and I Want You Back. I should be a new, incredible actor, singer, dancer that will shock the world. I will do no interviews. I will be magic. I will be a perfectionist, a researcher, a trainer, a masterer. I will study and look back on the whole world of entertainment and perfect it, take it steps further from where the greats left off.
Imagine having
Ambitious.
that ambition as
To be fair, he was writing it to himself, so he can sort of say what he wants in that context. But I think that this album represents a really great kicking off point for that. While it is nestled under the family of disco, it takes where disco left off and it turns it into something else. In Quincy Jones's words, what does he say? What are Quincy Jones's words? Quincy Jones says, "Our underlying plan was to take disco out. That was the bottom line. I admired disco, don't get me wrong. I just thought it had gone far enough." So yeah.
I think they achieved that
Yeah, his
did.
take what the greats had achieved and expand on it.
and pointed in a new direction.
That's the premise of this album. Point two.
What was point 2 again?
Uniqueness.
Oh.
One of the reasons that Michael Jackson is not the most overrated pop musician of all time is that he is wholly unique. He has a very specifically designed style. When he wrote that note to himself on the tour itinerary, he made that his mission statement and he followed it to the letter. Let's start by talking about his outfit on this cover.
Now, supposedly there was someone on board, I've forgotten her name, I'm afraid, at Epic Records who decided on the suit, but the socks that are glowing were Michael's idea. And it's something that he continued throughout his career. Insert clips here of the Billie Jean music video.
Go and dance on the floor in the round, baby.
And even up until the This Is It tour, he's still wearing his trademark white socks and kind of slightly cropped pants. So this is this first moment where we see a style trend that evolves but continues throughout the next 40 years of his career.
It's the beginning of his artistic self-actualization.
Yeah.
And that uniqueness extends to his performance. This man had a very distinctive vocal delivery.
I feel like when you compare how he sounded as a child, it had this very kind of rich but still childlike tone to it, a delicacy and an accuracy that you would not expect of a 9-10-year-old.
Vocally precocious.
That's a good way to put it. But I think this is the first album where we get his now kind of characteristic
Hiccups. Owls.
the hiccups in yes, his ad-libs that he throws in, but also this tone or timbre where he gets to a very feathery light part of his head voice. And again, you hear this throughout his career, and there are a couple tracks that display this. Again, in a form that arrives fully conceptualized.
The artist on this record sounds, to your point, nothing like the artist who was on his previous solo record. This is the first time he goes, this is who I am. Normally, again, as you mentioned with like Miley Cyrus or other artists, it takes them a minute to figure out how to become that. But at the same time, I guess he had spent such a long time as a kid performing in one way and watching all these other artists making things that he would like to make, that he had plenty of time to say, this is what this is exactly what I don't want. Mm-hmm. And this is how I learned to become what I do want. But let's listen to some of those examples.
To some of these examples, yes.
What have we got? So we open with a yowl, ear-splitting squeal. A whoa! And then throughout the song, there are these hiccupy sounds that he makes, which would come to be his trademark. Together, at this point, we've got advocating for his creative control and also creating this wholly realized sound using Miley Cyrus's. You're not Miley Cyrus.
I'm not.
Using the example of Miley Cyrus, that's not something that she was able to do. Even to this day, I think she's going through different phases.
A tendency to disparage whatever that was the last album.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't authentic, and then the new one is the most authentic one.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Whereas it feels like this is an artist who understood what his authenticity was from jump. His voice takes on a percussive element.
Like
just like that. He's using it both as a melodic instrument and also as a rhythmic instrument. You can really hear that on the song Working Day and Night. See what I mean? Like, that's very distinctive. What's our point 3? Emotionality.
Oh, my favorite
that sort of follows on from his uniqueness is his ability to inject his feelings into his music. There are a lot of artists who feel like they're really phoning it in when they sing pop songs. I don't get that impression from Michael Jackson, specifically not on this album.
It feels like 10 tracks of minus She's Out of My Life.
She's out of my life.
9 tracks of unbridled joy. This is something that... Am I allowed to mention Mike the Snare?
Yeah.
This is something that Mike the Snare mentions on his video in Michael Jackson, that you can hear him smiling through every track. When you smile, it changes the shape of your mouth, which means that the sounds that are coming out are going to sound different. And you can hear that. You can hear that he's smiling as he sings Get on the Floor.
You should try it yourself at home. Sing yourself a line, and then sing another one, grinning.
Should we do one?
Yeah, what are we going to say?
Maybe DJ Spin the Sound.
I was going to suggest We'll Meet Again by Vera Lynn.
Oh. How's it go?
We'll meet again. Don't know where. Don't know when.
All right, and smiling?
We'll meet again. Don't know where. Don't know when.
I think it makes the vowels wider. It's immediately recognizable if you're looking for it. You can hear when someone is smiling when they're singing.
We come with receipts. We have examples.
We have multiple examples.
Get on the floor. We have a happy one and a sad one. This is the happy one. He's just having a great time, you know? He's just...
I bet he's killer on the dance floor.
Yeah, because he was shy and eschewed interviews and things, I can See that being in the recording studio would be its happy place. Speaking as an artist, I love the recording studio. It's one of my favorite places to be. Yeah, because it's where you get to experience your ideas being realized. It's the point where what's happening in your head matches what's happening in your ears. Does that make sense?
I think so. I'm wildly distracted. So if we think about this as his emancipation from Motown and the Jackson 5, it would make sense that he's having the time of his life. He's recording
Sounding liberated
these
on the
tracks.
record.
The feeling and emotion that he brings, it isn't always just happiness and joy and party vibes. Party vibes. He goes to quite a vulnerable place in one track in particular, which is She's Out of My Life.
She's out of my life.
I don't want to be mean, but objectively, he is not singing well at that point.
No,
And
he's
it's
singing
so
very badly.
interesting that as a what do you call that? Self-professed
Okay.
perfectionist, he
Yeah.
allows for that to stay in the recording that goes on the record.
He's also a very accurate singer.
Yeah.
You can hear it from when he's a child.
Yeah, exactly. So this is simultaneously, I think, a conscious choice to prioritize feeling over accuracy, and also a moment where the listener at least has the impression that we're seeing a real, or hearing a real, vulnerable Michael who has just lost the love of his life. And I think that's such a powerful thing for an artist to be able to do.
You have very impressive cheekbones. He wrote the big hit of this album, the opening track.
Don't stop till you get enough.
This is relevant because many pop musicians don't write their own music. The majority of pop music artists don't write their own music, and that has been the case basically since the beginning of popular music. The Beatles were an anomaly. Will it Beatles?
I guess.
It's gonna Beatles twice.
It's gonna Beatles anyways.
This is the first Beatles. They were an anomaly in that they wrote entire albums of their own music and were popular musicians.
I think it's important, though, to stress the value of music that isn't necessarily written by its singer, or that is written...
Yeah, interpretation is
collective.
important. We are going to come back to that.
Okay. Because some of the greatest hits of the 20th century were not necessarily written by the person who
Oh, yeah.
performed it.
Yeah, Cole Porter gave his best songs to other people.
I also think it's one of the reasons that we have the pop versus rock debate, and which is better. We associate rock bands, rock musicians with writing their own music, and pop stars with not doing that. if
And
you
we
get-
equate each of those with good or bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, interpretation is important as well. Before we move on from this point, though, he is innately musical. It sort of ties together. When he wrote Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, the song was basically fully formed in his head, but he didn't have any experience with musical instruments. So he had to sing it to his brother, who then performed it on the piano for him, and then he could confirm, yes, that's how the song goes. It really gives you a sense of how music was just flowing through his veins. These songs could appear, and even though he had no way of conveying them, short of singing them to somebody else, those ideas were there.
MJ is always hands-on with everything that he does. He knows all of his records. He knows all of his tempos. He knows all of his keys of songs.
Look at just a little drag, a little bit more behind the beat.
Yeah,
Jump,
it's,
jump,
it's not the right sound.
like
So
you're
imagine
dragging
this is
yourself
the
out of
right
bed.
sound. Check this.
Jump, 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 jump.
Now I would like to talk about the thing that we skipped talking about before. Especially at this early point in his career. Even though he only wrote 6 of the songs on this album. How many
3.
songs? Even though he only wrote 3 of the 10 songs on this album, he and Quincy Jones poured over hundreds of songs to select the ones that would work best on this album. They ended up putting together an album of songs that were written by a number of different people, including Rod Temperton of Heatwave, and Stevie Wonder, and Paul McCartney.
Gonna tell your boyfriend, yeah.
Despite these disparate influences, these disparate songwriters, he was able to produce an album that was cohesive. It doesn't sound like he's switching from one artist to the next. It sounds like he's created a nice, balanced album. His sequencing is also great. He's balance the heavy songs against the light songs. It's not all a dance album. There are some quiet ones, there's some loud ones, there's some sad ones, the happy
Jazzy ones.
eerie ones. There is a lovely balance to the album. Every time that you have something that is a bit much or verges on a bit much, the next track will be understated. So we go, for instance, from Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which is huge, to the groovy, understated Rock With You.
Tailoring his record for maximum kind of usability.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. And again, most artists don't, I think, have that much of a hand. Most pop musicians don't have that much of a hand in how the album works. Oh, wait, I forgot the Will It Beatles, our second
Beatled.
reference was that it Beatled, yeah. That Paul McCartney wrote the song Girlfriend and released it on his of questionable quality 1977 album London Town. Michael Jackson takes it and makes it his own. This
And
wasn't
possibly makes it better. Definitely makes it better.
I'm gonna tell your boyfriend, yeah.
his falsetto
It really works here.
works better, I think, than Paul McCartney's does. And as much as I respect Paul McCartney's bass lines, tell them to see this video.
There's a video in this corner that you can watch where Nancy plays Paul McCartney's top 20? 50 bass lines.
According to me.
It's a good one. Would recommend.
I was going to ask if you liked it.
I liked it.
I'm glad.
One thumb up because the other one's propping me up.
Okay. Despite my respect for Paul McCartney's bass lines, I think that this is a much funkier,
Groovier.
better
Sweeter.
bass line. It works better with the song.
Oh.
So that's that sort of curation skill that I mean. He can take something that is not his and go, I can make that mine.
And better.
And put it on an album of music that still sounds like, you know, it's not going to sound like he's covering Wings. It sounds like he wrote it himself.
And I don't actually think I heard the Paul McCartney version until way after I heard the Michael Jackson version, which I think also makes me biased towards the first one that I heard. But
It also shows how much your head was in your butt when you were a teenager, because I played a lot of London Town. Michael Jackson co-produced this album with Quincy Jones, which meant that I don't know to what extent, but he did have a hand in the production of this album. And this album is immaculately produced. Part of what makes it sound so cohesive is that there are running threads throughout the album. One of them is
strings and counter melodies. Almost every track has an incredible string part that kind of weaves its way through the melody, sometimes acting as a counterpoint to the vocals, sometimes introducing an entirely new theme,
sometimes just being a percussion instrument.
sometimes just being a percussion instrument. There are a lot of orchestral hits, and in my very, very limited research, I couldn't find an earlier example of orchestral hits being used for their percussive qualities.
Oh wait, we have an example.
We have examples.
Yes. Our example is my favorite song on the album.
Oh.
It's The Falling in Love.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's only gonna happen again. That was a terrible example because there were no strings in it, but it was a lot of fun. I had a good time. What's that track?
Which one?
This one.
Get on the floor.
Aha. The other thing about production that I would like to say is that this man is a master of percussion. He is credited on this album with the percussion arrangements, and often he is directing not only his voice, not only the drums, but also the bass and the strings and the horns. Everything is contributing to this rhythm, to building this textural rhythmic strata. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Okay.
The thing that I really like about the rhythm section is he utilizes a lot of little tinny sounding instruments like cowbell or
Often they're not even instruments, they're just like bottles and things.
bottles and things. And so it has this kind of organic feel.
Salt of the earth.
Almost like this is happening on a street somewhere with people just playing things that they found.
Yeah.
And I think it gives such a liveliness and
Vibrance.
Vivacity, yes, vibrance to the songs in a way that move beyond the driving rhythm of the drum, which is mostly doing a 4 to the floor,
4 on the floor.
4 on the floor.
Yeah.
So good.
I think that that is more than most pop musicians not necessarily are able to do, but just do. He would go on to be basically the sole conductor producer of his work. He continued to work with Quincy Jones, but this album in a way was almost like a practice run, because for albums like Thriller, his masterpiece,
His magnum opus.
arguably, I like this one better actually.
I also really like this one better. Wow, we're just so cool.
I liked Michael Jackson before he was cool. I lost my train of thought.
His magnum opus.
Oh. Yeah, where he would have the entire thing mapped out. His job, in addition to singing the songs and writing the songs, was conveying to the other musicians on the album what they needed to be doing. Most artists, again, don't do that. Most artists have a producer specifically for that reason. That is a person who serves to design the sound around the song that is presented to them. He did that himself. One of the great legacies of Michael Jackson and his oeuvre was that he was a pioneer, and he would take an existing style and reinvent it. Again, just like he intended. You can hear the beginnings of that on this album. He would go on to fully realize these ideas with songs like Beat It.
That fuse rock
Hard
and
rock.
pop.
Yeah, I think he has Van Halen on that track.
Yeah.
Which is just unheard of. You don't have Van Halen on an R&B record unless you're Michael Jackson. And it's not especially obvious on this record, but you can hear glimpses of it in, for example, the solo on Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. I suspect that might be a synth, but they have styled it with distortion in such a way that it sounds like an electric guitar. So there's this sort of playing with different sounds, different voices from other genres and fusing them. A pioneer he was.
So the final track is Burn This Disco Out, which is one of the tracks that fully commits to its disco vibe. This is Quincy and Michael's mic drop moment where they've seen disco out. It's done. They've taken it to its highest summit. And that's it. The album is over and now we're moving on to something else.
And disco did indeed kind of die after this. The release of the album did sort of coincide with the Disco Demolition Night nastiness.
Disco sucks! Disco sucks! Disco sucks!
This was like a lovely swan song to the...
Homophobic and racist actions of
Yeah,
disenfranchised white men.
I'll stand by that. But no, it was an end of an era. He did indeed see it out. This was the beginning also of his crossing over from the R&B market into the mainstream pop.
Which is code for white market.
Like, you might say that he's overrated, but can you argue with the fact that he is one of the best-selling artists of all time? I have some facts.
Ooh.
This album was number 3 on the top LPs and tapes chart and number 1 on the R&B albums chart. That's what I mean about crossover success. It's beginning at this point, because the LPs and tapes chart isn't black music, whereas the R&B charts were very much black music. On the R&B albums chart, this album sat at number 1 for 16 weeks. It was
a banger.
one of, if not the best-selling album of 1980. It went 9 times platinum in the States, and it went platinum in 11 other countries. He went on to make Thriller, which is the top-selling album of all time.
Not likely to ever be dethroned because it's just so far ahead. So the likes of even Taylor Swift aren't going to dethrone.
Really hard to make the argument that he's overrated when he's that broadly popular. Like, can all those people be wrong, or does he genuinely have this extra star quality, this appeal, this
That translates across generations and cultures.
Yep.
And
time?
Time.
Yeah, I suppose that's generations. There is no way that you can take one of the top-selling artists of all time and say, overrated.
maybe you can with Taylor Swift.
Oh, a secret Taylor Swift burn.
Even she has her, like, I understand the appeal. I just don't think it's for me.
If they weren't good, they wouldn't have the success. No.
No.
Taylor Swift.
Spelling is fun!
What's 10?
10 is Ooh.
Ooh, ooh. Is this a good one?
It's the pure danceability and enjoyment of the thing. You know, we've been talking about his uniqueness, his production, the fact that he's writing and he's curating and everything, but ultimately what it comes down to is that the music is so fundamentally enjoyable.
Earwormy. You can't help but start to move as you hear it. And I think
Memorable hooks that get, earwormy, they get stuck in your head for days. And
memorable hooks, but I think a big part of it is that each track, as I've kind of alluded to already, has a killer bass line, and we can only choose one in the interest of time. The incredible work that is happening on this instrument in Get on the Floor, it almost dethrones Michael as the protagonist of the song.
Yeah.
And it goes like this. Hello. More strings. We should see if we can find that isolated.
Yes, yeah. Here's what the bass line sounds like isolated. Those little ghost notes, those percussive elements, are a big part of what add to the danceability of this track. A ghost note is when you're playing the bass, but then you mute your strings and continue plucking in a way that creates a more percussive popping noise. It's not the same as slap, where you're smacking the strings with your thumbs and popping the strings with your fingers. It's just a little percussive accent. You can really hear it in that isolated bass line. In terms of the danceability, you know, you can't help but dance when you're listening to these pieces of music.
There's so many components that that push you onto the floor, including the 4 to the floor, 4 on the floor,
4 on the floor.
4 on the floor drums. So you have that beat, and then there's a lot of syncopation.
It's those layered rhythmic textures that we were talking about earlier.
The kind of tinny layer of percussion. You have the bass line.
There's a whole spectrum of frequencies where you've got, like, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough is actually a really good example. In that track, you've got an electric guitar doing this gung, 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 gung.
Best electric guitar sound ever for dancing.
Yes, I was going to say George Harrison's on Revolver is up there. For a different feel, though. Different
Brian
purpose.
Mays.
Oh, yeah, this is pretty
That's
good,
a good
too.
one.
Boston.
Oh, tip top.
We've got that high frequency sort of bottly thing that's happening. You've got your kick thumping along at the bottom. You've got the strings doing this, bah!
And
But it doesn't sustain, that's the thing. It goes and that shortness, that staccato nature of that note
catches you and kind of keeps...
It adds to the percussion, it drives the piece along.
Is the
Hi-hat?
hi-hat also going...
Rock with
falling?
you, is it?
Yeah.
And we can ride the boogie.
It's
So
these-
fun.
Yeah. It's attention to detail with those sorts of elements that make the song drive, that make you want to dance. Oh, this is a really good example. There are so many percussive layers on this track.
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Okay.
Yeah, I
think that's
can't
only...
sit still when I hear that. I don't think that his music itself is overrated, even. Like, we've covered his abilities as an artist, but the actual music itself, I don't think is overrated. I think it speaks for itself. It is...
masterful songwriting.
Yeah.
Numerous artists and producers who have cited Michael Jackson as one of their influences, either in terms of their singing or their production. People like Questlove
Mr. Questlove. Hi.
or Pharrell
I'm up all night to get lucky.
or The Weeknd,
Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars. You can see these artists taking elements from Michael Jackson and
Embellishing or
embellishing,
making them their own.
elucidating in a really meaningful way. So The Weeknd, for example, has said that his style of singing, which is also often in this kind of falsetto range, breathy, feathery, was directly inspired by Michael Jackson. And it was for him a moment where he realized that he could actually sing, because that's what his voice, I guess, sounded like.
To that point, though, Despite being influenced by these artists at Motown, Michael Jackson himself was singular. So he produced the sound that produced other artists, that created, birthed these other new sounds. To be able to have that level of influence is a tremendous skill. I don't think that somebody who has that kind of influence can be overrated. I think they are justly rated. I think Michael Jackson is justly rated.
Nice. I agree.
I hope we've convinced you.
At least to go and have a listen to 42 minutes of ecstasy that is this album, preferably in a room with a bit of space so that you can get down on it. Nice.
And I think with that, we should stop. We should end.
Anything else?
And just goodbye. And that's it from us.
If you've enjoyed today's episode,
Or you would like to support any of the weird things I do.
Nancy will leave a link in the comment section, not the comment section,
The description.
in the description down below, where you can go to her Buy Me a Coffee page and make a contribution should you so desire.
No
But
pressure, friends.
No pressure.
Thank you so much to everybody who has made a donation or signed up as a member. I have an immense appreciation of you, for you.
With you.
If you're curious about what any of my original music sounds like, I will leave a link in the description to that as well. My band Tweed will have a new album coming out in the next few months.
They're exciting,
Very exciting. I'm quite proud of it.
as you should be. Apart from
Otherwise, thanks for
yeah.
hanging out with us.
we'll see you here next week.
Have a great weekend. Okay, let's try again. Put your damn phone away.
Okay, recording now. Good night.
Good night.
Love you.
Love you.
Sleep well.
Sleep well. Also by
We
the
often
Beatles.
sing harmonies together.
We often sing harmonies together.
Sometimes you just need the Gregorian chant.
That's true. I always say that.
It's the being in love that makes me cry, cry, cry.
I'm sitting on the taller pillow so that it looks like we're the same height, but actually, I'm a short ass compared to her. I'm not actually a short ass. I'm relatively tall.
You're over average. I'm just a giant.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say you're more of an ogre.
Hello.
Hi. Let's start by talking about his out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When I edit that, that's gonna go boom.
Oh, la 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 la.
Oh, I'm doing it.
Zipper microphone.
She's not usually in the videos. She must just like you a lot.
I like me a lot too.
That's so good. When he wrote Don't stop till you got
stop
enough.
until you have enough. Come on, growing hell.
One of them is.
Strings and counter melodies. Counter. Strings and
One of them is.
One more time. I have a thought.
Really?
Just one.
Whoa.
And it has the
Oh,
dance, which is hard to do.
that's beautiful. In Quincy.
Mike and Quincy. Quincy is a cute name, isn't it? Good name for a cat.
Really good name for a cat.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift notwithstanding.
Oh, the Swifties are gonna come for us.
I don't think they're watching this.
You never know.
They're everywhere. Trained in the passion for the taste of pain.
Well done. 1, 2, 3.
Wait. Oh! I believe I can fly.